Irish. And the beard.
You approve?
I do. I like it. Good morning, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Tony Simone. I represent the west side of Manhattan. Before I get into the specifics of the legislation, I just want to say we are here for our fellow immigrant New Yorkers and Americans. Those who work hard, feed us, protect us, go to war for us. I'm also here for my Latino mama, Luisa, and my cousins Javier and Janita, and my undocumented cousins I will not name, who are living in fear. No American should live in this fear. We are on the verge, actually we're in the midst of an autocracy, and we will not stand for it. And I'm here with many of the champions sticking up for immigrant New Yorkers. I've introduced legislation similar to the California bill called the MELT Act, mandating end of lawless tactics. When police wear masks, democracy loses its face. We want to protect law enforcement too. I know that will be a question, but it is un-American that masked ICE agents are going after immigrant families. You've seen the videos, you've heard from your friends, separating them from their children, going after legal residents, even citizens, sometimes mistakenly. Today, an ICE agent was quoted as saying, an Iranian mom having a seizure, that I'm a citizen, it doesn't matter, the ICE agent said. And in this big, bad, terrible budget bill, they put $30 to $40 billion in bonuses to have a quota of how many people they deport. These are human beings. Overstaying your visa is a civil offense. ICE agents need to be identified with a badge number like every officer. You entrust the community and immigrants to do it the right way. They're coming here trying to do it the right way, and we're taking away their freedom and liberty. That is not the America we believe in. That is not the democracy we believe in.
That's right.
I introduced the MELT Act to stop unmarked mass agents from terrorizing communities. No badges, no names, no rules. This must stop. It's modeled after the California bill by my great colleague there, Senator Scott Wiener. It'll ensure greater transparency and accountability. And we will exempt those clearly. We're talking to law enforcement, SWAT teams, and those who are going after narcotic drug lords. We want to protect them as well. But we want to end this fear. Autocracy is on the rise, but we are going to fight back, and we're going to do this at every bone in our body to protect immigrant New Yorkers, and the state will have the jurisdiction to protect civil liberties. But now I'm going to go on and introduce these great champions, wishing the city controller, Brad Lander, a happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
It was yesterday, I think.
I'll take it.
A champion of immigrant New Yorkers, my hero. My mom even said, I love that Brad Lander keeps going down there to protect fellow New Yorkers. And now Brad Lander.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Simone, for introducing this critical bill, and it's so good to be here with Assemblymembers Lee and Simon, and also my dear friend and Manhattan Borough President and Democratic nominee for Comptroller, Mark Levine. What's at stake here is whether or not we are a nation under the rule of law. It really is that simple, and those of you that have spent time in these buildings know what I'm talking about. The rule of law requires clarity about what the rules are, visibility of the folks who enforce them, and accountability of the system. And those things are being utterly lost in these buildings. The rules are being changed from week to week to week. And when masked, unbadged, ununiformed federal agents grab people in hallways and elevator lobbies and abduct them without any clear relationship to court orders or the rule of law, it's not only immigrants, it's not only asylum seekers who live in fear, who lose their rights. It is our democracy itself that is undermined. And I mean, of course, yes, I say this as someone who was arrested and detained by masked federal officers who I believe did not have the authority to arrest me, and whose identities I still don't know. And that is utterly unacceptable. It is, as the Assembly member made clear, done for the purpose of striking fear into asylum seekers and immigrants in the hope that they will be terrorized by masked gangs who seek to grab and abduct them and leave on their own without even coming to these buildings. But the consequences are real for all of us. And you can just do the thought experiment. We're lucky in this city to have law enforcement officials at the NYPD who work to keep our communities safe. But what would it be if they started wearing masks and stopped wearing badges and were able to enact enforcement in our neighborhoods with no visibility of who they were, of what their names are, of what their badge numbers are, with masks on their faces? That would be autocracy in our neighborhoods. This is autocracy in our immigration courts. And we have to stand up and fight back against it. I have asked ICE agents or federal agents masked in these buildings why they're wearing masks in my conversations with them in the hallway. And I've gotten a few different answers. Honestly, probably the most honest answer I got was one officer said, well, 4 years ago, you made us wear masks. And I said, sir, I don't think that balaclava will protect you from COVID. And he was then offered a KN95, which he declined. But to me, it really speaks about what is going on here. They are prosecuting a culture war, and they are doing it with the symbols of authoritarianism. Gangs in hallways and elevator lobbies, without uniforms, with masks, are meant as a signal of prosecuting a culture war. Unfortunately, this one with the power to detain and deport people to places where they may well be killed. So that was one answer I got. Others have basically said to me, well, we'll be doxxed. Now, this is despite the fact that, as the reporters in this room know, they've mostly prevented you from having the ability to take their pictures anyway. But federal agents who have said, well, if we don't wear masks, people will take our pictures, and then we might be held accountable for the actions that we're taking. The rule of law is accountability for the actions law enforcement take. That's all we have. Is there will be laws. The people who enforce them will operate under rules. You will be able to know who they were and what authority they operated under. You will have a chance to ask whether they appropriately applied those laws, and you will have a day in court where you could do so. My friends, that is the rule of law. And when the enforcement agents mask themselves and don't wear badges, so you have no idea who they are, what agency they work for, what authority they operate under, then it becomes impossible to hold them accountable for their actions. And I'll just end by saying that's all I was trying to do on the day I was arrested, was asking for a warrant, is saying, what authority are you operating under? Who are you? Do you have the right person? What authority do you have to detain them? And who are you to do it? And by refusing to present the warrants, by refusing to make clear who they are and what authority they operate under, they are stripping away the foundations of the rule of law. And that's why this MELT Act is so important, both for addressing fear immigrants are facing in these buildings in our communities, and for making clear that New York is a state where the rule of law applies. Thank you very much for introducing this bill, and to my colleagues for supporting it.
Thank you. Now I want to call a champion who had the same idea almost at the same time, my great colleague, Assemblymember Joanne Simon.
Thank you, Assemblymember Simone. Great idea. I do say so myself. So, You know, we've talked around this issue a bit, but the fundamentals are what concerns me. We are a nation of laws, and we are acting in a lawless way. Rather, we are not, others are. And they are being given the imprimatur of the federal government to act in a lawless fashion. And yes, they are picking up all kinds of people. We know they are picking up people who are in fact naturalized citizens, who are legally, those who are legally here in this country, and those who will be suffering great damage if they are deported. We did used to have asylum laws. We still have them. And in fact, we have been using those laws for people from Europe who are, surprise, surprise, white. And so it's very clear that this is really based on white supremacy. It is based on a fascist notion of what it is that this government is about, when that is not what the United States is about. My relatives came here. By the way, I've said this several times, if you think everybody who came here to Ellis Island had papers, you're kidding yourself. People were too poor to have papers. People didn't have papers. Most of them couldn't read or write any language, let alone English. And that's why their names are now Smith. But the reality is, even those who did know how to speak and read and write their own language came without papers for the most part. When they got here, they were issued some paper by those at Ellis Island. So the reality is, this undocumented nonsense is really nonsense. We have to, in fact, have a little path to citizenship, and we have to then honor the laws we have, where people are here, they have the relevant documentation to be here legally in this country, and we are supposed to enforce a law. Do we need legal changes? Yes. Who has been the obstacle? In fact, if I recall, I'm old enough to remember 2 years ago when there was a Republican-led bill that was the most conservative, but nevertheless had bipartisan support to reform our immigration services and our immigration laws. And all of a sudden it got pulled because the Republican candidate for president didn't like it, because they wanted to do what they're doing now. They want all of these masked marauders. You know, I could get dressed up in black and put on a mask and call myself an ICE agent, because we don't know that the people who are there are in fact people just like me, except that I would never do that. But you know what I'm saying. They are not necessarily law enforcement. I'm not sure that they're not part of the various groups like the Proud Boys and others who are just dressing up. They think this is a game. It is not a game. And they are, in fact, deporting people who are here legally, people who are citizens. And you know what we call that? If you deport somebody without due process, it's kidnapping. And we cannot be party to that. And so that's why I support this bill. I'm very happy that my colleague, he got to the finish line before me. But the reality is, this is the right thing to do. We need to protect our people, because the reality is, this is not about enforcing the law. This is about intimidation. And they are scaring people. And they're doing that deliberately. And we should not be part of that. New York State should not be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And now I'd like to introduce another good friend and champion of immigrants in all of New York, the city controller-elect, Mark Levine, Manhattan Borough President currently.
Thank you. Only nominee.
Only nominee, right. I always get that wrong.
Thank you, Assemblymember, for your leadership on this and your partnership. I'm really grateful for you. I want to say to the current Comptroller, Brad Lander, that I am incredibly grateful to your leadership in standing up to the threat of democracy, to literally putting your body on the line in a fight for those values. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course also grateful to you, Assemblymember Simon, and Frank, Grace May, Grace Lee, forgive me. What is the difference between domestic law enforcement and military operations? Where's the line? What is it that defines domestic law enforcement? There are certain pillars. It's the protection of civil liberties. It is the guarantee of due process is the assurance of right to representation, to legal counsel. And underlying all of this, it's the guarantee of transparency and accountability. The Trump administration is erasing all of those lines. They're undermining all of these norms. In a country now where federal agents can detain anybody, whether they're a citizen or not, with or without charges, with or without due process, sometimes without access to a lawyer. This is terrifying. This terrifies me. This is creeping authoritarianism. And against this backdrop, we have federal agents as a matter of routine, not as part of extraordinary operations, as the Assemblymember mentioned, not as part of narcotic stings or SWAT operations, but as a matter of routine, covering their faces, wearing no name tags, no identifying serial numbers, nothing to allow the public to secure accountability and transparency. This undermines the norms of democracy. It only adds to the fear among immigrant communities. That appears to be the point. We're here today to stand up for those communities, to stand up for democracy, to stand up, as the Comptroller said, for the rule of law. And that, at a minimum, requires that face masks not be used by law enforcement as a matter of routine. So I'm standing with you, our colleagues in the Assembly, proud to be following the lead of my friend in California, Senator Scott Wiener, and calling for the passage of this legislation to at least give us this measure of transparency in the routine operation of law enforcement. Just a few words in Spanish, probablemente en español, a nuestros hermanos y hermanas hispanoparlantes y todos los inmigrantes de donde vengan. Yo sé que ustedes están ahora mismo viviendo por un terror en este país, donde pueden coger quien sea, no importa su ciudadanía, si tienen documentos o no, si son familias trabajadores o no, si son mamás o hijos o abuelos, quien sea, que los pueden coger en cualquier momento, estando en escuela, hospital, iglesia, tribunal, corte. Esto no se llama democracia. Esto se llama dictadura. No es aceptable. Y si por encima no sabemos ni siquiera quiénes son los agentes, porque se tapan las caras con mascarillas que no llevan ni nombres o números, ni escudo siquiera, eso no es democracia, eso no se puede aceptar. Venimos aquí a exigir que ningún agente federal se tape las caras cuando son operaciones rutinarias. Y me uno a mi colega, concejal, el asambleísta Simone, que es hijo orgulloso de mamá peruana, junto con nuestros colegas asambleístas Joanne Simon, Grace Lee, el actual Comptroller Brad Lander, a apoyar a este proyecto de ley, el llamado MELT Act, para proteger a nuestras comunidades inmigrantes. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to get out those language tapes. And now to my amazing colleague, I would say she's a rising star, but she's already a star. Assemblymember Grace Lee, who was here just last week trying to protect immigrants to have their due process. And I saw you on the news, and I was so proud of you, and I'm going to join you later this summer. Thank you so much, Grace Lee, for your work.
Thank you, Assemblymember Simone. I'm proud to be here to support the MELT Act to unmask ICE. Last week, I went to federal immigration proceedings at 26 Federal Plaza, right here on the 12th floor. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, masked ICE agents were lining the hallways to the court, heading to the courtroom. They had wearing their caps low, their masks up, no identification, but they're weapons were visible. This is a strategy of fear and intimidation for our immigrant communities, and we cannot stand for this. This bill is about transparency, it's about accountability, and sending the message that ICE agents are never above the law. So thank you very much, Assemblymember Simone, for introducing this legislation, and we're going to work to get this passed.
Thank you, thank you. I just want to end it on a quick note. You know, just yesterday, I think the day before, ICE agents and the military entered a park in LA where little Latino kids and some white kids were playing soccer. They arrested no one, but it struck fear through the community. I have friends who live near that soccer field. That is un-American. It is un-American that my mom cries to me at night and says, what is happening to our democracy? When I lived in Peru, we had a dictator, and I left. That cannot happen here. I have a message to the fascists in the White House, and Mr. Homan, whatever his name is, the so-called voters are, thinks he's a tough guy. We will come up with every creative tool in the state legislature. We will do everything, every bone in our body to fight for the America we believe in. There is no doubt that we have an immigration challenge, but the way you solve that is by comprehensive immigration reform and compromise, which we had 2 years ago, and this bully in the White House turns his back on just to win an election. We will forever fight you on this. We need a legal path to citizenship. It's hurting our economy right now. You know, you're hurting our farmers, our hotels, and we depend on them. They're part of the American fabric. And I will continue with my great colleagues here to fight for the justice and for the rule of law. Like Brad Lander, the great city controller, said, it's about not being above the law. I know the fascist in the White House thinks he's above the law, but one day, they will all answer for their crimes against humanity. It is un-American to send people to gulags. But now on that note, we will take questions.
I'm wondering, I'm sorry, I haven't read the bill, but do you think that they will have jurisdiction inside 26 Federal Plaza? Can you explain the jurisdictional issue there since it's a federal building?
I'm confident. It's not like they follow the law right now, the federal government, but I'm confident that it'll hold up in a court of law. Our civil liberties must be protected, and the New York State does have jurisdiction.
Inside the building also?
We will, in the end, the courts will probably have to decide, as they've decided so far, some, you know, in a good way and some in a bad way so far, that it's a stopgap measure on a rise of autocracy, that you should be accountable as a law enforcement officer. So I'm confident we can pass this bill, and I'm confident that it will hold up in court.
Can you also talk about the timeline? Because I don't think the Assembly begins again until January, so what happens in the meantime? How quickly is this actually going to happen?
So the question was, what happens about the timeline since we don't convene until January with the terrible bad budget? Do you want to answer that, Joanne? The big budget bill, the big ugly bullshit bill, I call it, that's going to strike taking health care away from so many Americans. I'm sure we're going to be in Albany a lot quicker. And I've already raised this with the Speaker and my colleagues. There's broad support in both the Assembly and the Senate. I'm confident we can pass this bill.
What do you do about making sure that you follow the
Are you from the press? Where are you from?
act?
Okay. What was your question?
So if the act gets passed, what steps are you going to take to make sure that they follow it?
Well, I mean, we'd have to enforce it and have our local, we will meet with law enforcement to make sure they follow it. There'd be clearly, whenever we pass law, there's a follow-up period to make sure the law is actually being carried out. Joanne, you want to address anyone?
No, I'm.
Any other questions?
I think you were just talking about potentially coming back earlier into session. What would be on the agenda? I mean, it's kind of unrelated to this, but you mentioned the budget bill that just passed. What would you want to have on the agenda?
The question was, what would be the agenda if we went back to special session sooner, which we anticipate, because we're meeting on Friday to discuss the big bullshit, ugly budget bill that's taking away people's health care and people's civil rights. I would anticipate, look, I've always been fighting for immigrant rights. I come from an immigrant family. I will bring it up, regardless. And as my colleagues will tell you, they have also been champions in our conferences. But I imagine we were going to address the drastic billions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid and health care that's going to affect over 17 million education, 17 million New Yorkers, education cuts, you name it, housing cuts to our public housing that we support. So I imagine it's not going to be one topic. But, you know, I think a lesson we've learned from this election on this is we need to start delivering. We need to start protecting immigrants. We need to start building housing. We need to start ensuring that we deliver for the working class so they don't turn to autocracy. I think most Americans are rising up in all parties that this is unacceptable or un-American to be disappeared by masked men. I mean, who would have thought? It's like we're living a horror movie.
You know, New York is also a huge farming state. And so we're hearing about the effect on farmers in other states, which is very real, but it is also a very real impact here. And of course, there is so much back and forth with Canada, just the way we do business in New York State. So they're a big market for us. They are also a provider of employees, and we have a large number of immigrants who are working on our farms in New York State.
Any other questions? Thank you for all coming. Now go get cool with some AC.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.